Hi, everyone. Today I'm thrilled to welcome an incredibly gifted individual to the show, Raminder. She is a talented psychic healer and an intuitive tarot card reader who has helped countless people gain clarity, guidance, and healing through her unique abilities. With her deep connection to energy and a compassionate approach, Raminder empowers others to navigate life challenges and discover their true path, whether it's unlocking the mysteries of the tarot or fascinating transformative healing sessions. Raminder brings wisdom and positivity to everyone she works with. I cannot wait to dive into this fascinating conversation and learn more about Raminder, your journey. Could you please give us your introduction?
Thank you, Neha, for having me. I'm so happy to be here and for that intro. Yeah, like Neha said, I'm an intuitive psychic healer, what people call a starseed or divine feminine. There's so many labels that could go along with that. I'm also a lawyer and life coach, and there's a lot of different facets to what I do. One of my main kind of goals for the collective is to bridge the gap between, what's happening within our matrix, which is like our 3D world, and what's happening within energy and how we can really transform to live in our purpose and our, in an empowered way. And I wrote a book on it called Debunking the World We Live In, which is all about energy as well, and how that plays a role in our physical and in our psyche. And yeah, I've been reading tarot now for over 5, 6 years, been on my awakening path for longer, and everything just seems like yesterday. And when you look at the calendar, it's not. But that's also because time is man-made and not energetic. We're kind of on a path of never really aging energetically, but seeing a lot of newness. And hopefully I can bring some clarity to those that are, on their newly awakened path now, or that just want to learn more about the work I do.
Yes, yes, for sure. And I mean, I've been following you. I
Hmm.
hear what you have to say, and it's nothing short of amazing. I mean, I
Thank you.
feel like as if you're reading it for me. Like, I'm sure everyone who's watching you feels the same. And that's why I thought it's very important for me to have you here because I mean, I've been following you from like 2 years now, and
Hmm.
the readings that you do and the things that you talk about, like it makes so much sense, like because I guess it depends on where each individual is. And I mean, and going back to the same thing, like since I've been following you, but what started, because I remember you, like how you said you were a lawyer, right? Um and then I saw you reading, like being a psychic healer, like how this transition happened.
Yeah, so it was eye-opening for sure. I'm still like a registered lawyer and stuff, and I'm going back into practice part time.
Okay.
And I took a pause. Yeah, I haven't really said that too much because I'm not taking clients on right now, so I don't want to like reject individuals that may need help at the moment. And so I've just kind of kept it quiet. But I took a pause from my practice for a couple of years to figure out what I really wanted to do in this business and what the creator, within me and source wanted me to achieve. And even last night, like, I'm always getting these downloads and they're like, you need to really be more assertive. I was like, I'm already really assertive. If you follow me, but they're like, we need more. And that's taken a long time to get to. So the spark in my awakening, and I've done a whole podcast on my podcast in depth, like probably 40 minutes. So if individuals want to know every single kind of step, but it really started end of 2017 or so. I started to lean into like what is intuition. And I was already really intuitive. My whole life I've been intuitive. I didn't know that it was a power I had, right? I didn't know it was something that was unlocked. Mainly because I was always the black sheep, right? Like it, and usually healers are because they see things beyond the scene or whatever we want to say. So I started to look into my intuition. I started to kind of test it out in different ways. Like, I'm sensing this intuitively. Is this going to transpire into something? And then I had a huge awakening while I was going through my bar program, PLTC, it's called. And like a lot of the time, awakening can feel like depression. And so, because you're going through an ego death, you're going through this really big shed, and it was profound. And I'm like trying to get called to the bar. So it was a lot at the same time. Later that year, I met my twin flame, and that was my catalyst. So, twin flame is like not everybody has one, not everybody will have one, but an individual that was meant to spark my ascension and is my like basically it's like two souls in one body, but you don't actually need to end up with that person. The goal, and I won't, but like the goal with that is like to integrate what you learn through the mirror that they provide you. And so when I met him, it was very shocking and jarring because what I said to my friend was, I've never met myself before. And that always makes me really emotional to like think about because I was
Right.
like, oh my goodness, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I integrated all of that, and a part of it was going through this journey of the awakening, learning more about my purpose, learning more about what I'm meant to create, what I'm meant to do here, that I'm not meant to just be a lawyer, that I am meant to follow my creativity and that whole pursuit. Because I've always been about academia, but I've always had um, this other side to me, and now this was added on top. And so kind of fast forward a couple of months after that catalyst, I was preparing for a trial at the firm that I was at because I had got called to the bar and all of that as well. And I was trying to figure it out as a full time job. So just where people are now is somewhere I was many years ago. And it's very confusing. And I took it really seriously as a way to also, I didn't think at that point that I'd be teaching it, but
Mhm.
it became very clear to me through my own coaches and my own healers that it was something I needed to do. And for me, it's like when I set my mind on something, I'm gonna see it through the end. Whatever the outcome is of that, I'm gonna see it through the end. And so that's what's led me here. That's what led me to take a pause in my practice because I started my own business and started doing a lot more activism, even though I was already an activist, just was more public about it. And now I've just tried to mesh everything together the best that I can.
Yes, I can totally relate to it as well. Because I mean, it's not easy to stand up for yourself and accept yourself as you are. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is what happened with me when I got up in the morning, 3rd of January, and I knew I had to start this podcast. I felt like it
Right.
was my calling, like, and I just followed the path. And that's
Yeah.
where, like, I think I've been, like how I said, I've been following you and the kind of readings that you do. It feels like there was a nudge to, why don't you start it? Like,
Yeah.
why are you waiting? Like, what are you waiting for? Like, is there a particular time that you're waiting for? So I totally get that energy.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad you did it too.
Thank you. And I think related to that, I have a question where, like, let's say if somebody comes to you, like, and talk to you about tarot, like, how people already have a mindset, right? People think about tarot in very different ways. So, did you
Yeah.
have any experience where you had to, like, and let's start with your family, since you were practicing law, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you moved into tarot. How did they take it, like, to begin with?
Honestly, I didn't know how it would go, but they really haven't cared at all.
Oh, nice.
And I think that's partly because I've always just kind of done what I want to do for the most part, not all the time, especially in a brown household. We know how that goes. But my parents are very much aware that I know how to bring my gifts out into a purpose.
Hmm.
I think I've always kind of been that person. And they've known that I've had this platform for longer than the time I've been doing this work. And so I feel there's more intrigue. And even with writing my book and all of that, very supportive. My dad is the one that invested in me getting my first couple of boxes printed, things like that. So I mean, the book is more academic, so you can be like, yeah, my daughter wrote a book, right? It's like on the mantle in the living room. But yeah, there was no question. There was more intrigue. And I think it kind of just made sense. Like with my friends mainly, they were like, I mean, I'm closer to my friends than I am to a lot of my family. That's just how it's been. I mean, that's what happens when you're a black sheep as well. So when I kind of brought it up to them, they didn't even flinch. They're like, "Oh yeah, like you've always been intuitive, like that's why we ask you for advice." Right? I was like, okay, I didn't realize it was this ability." And then there's a side of people that are like, we want to know what you do, how did you get there, but it's more of like a they want me to re-explain everything. So I'm like, if you actually want to know, go and watch this, go and read this, go and listen to this. They won't because they're nosy, they're not actually genuinely supportive.
Hmm.
So you have both sides, but the support piece comes from people that are afraid, that are maybe inauthentic in themselves too, right?
Yes.
And that's something that's been really hard to come to grips with because I always talk about the more we elevate, the brighter our bubble becomes, the more
Right.
that falls off of that bubble. Because you start to take up more space. Not everybody can hold on to that. And that has been a difficult part of the journey. And also seeing like who expected me to give them free services, who wanted to take advantage. And that's not with the older, sometimes with the older generation, but more auntie and stuff. And I know my boundaries and how to set them.
Mm-hmm.
But with my immediate household, my cousins, it was like my ones that I talk to regularly or friends. Nobody was judgmental. I think it all just made sense to them that this would happen maybe at some point, or that I'd be able, like, because I get to bring my academic background into the coaching I do, because it's not like I'm just reading tarot. Like, I'm helping people plan portions of their life out in these sessions.
Right.
And having, the professional background I do, I can bring that in because I have a lot of professionals from various backgrounds that are coming in. And because I've also made a shift into more of a purposeful life, I can kind of show them what that path looked like, as well as empathize with maybe their hesitations and frustrations and difficulties. And just to kind of became a long-winded answer, I didn't expect that. But what's funny is that, like, I don't know if any of these individuals will listen, but like people will go up to my mom at work and stuff. It's like, I follow your daughter.
That's so nice.
Yeah, my mom works in the hospital. And she's like, oh yeah, like, there are these people on my floor that follow you and stuff. And so I think for them, it gives them a sense of pride, or like they see that the community respects what I do, or
Right.
that there's people that are intrigued by what their daughter does. And I think that helps them kind of lessen any confusion that may come along.
Sure.
But again, they've been super, super supportive.
Oh, that's so nice to hear.
Yeah.
I think you need that support system, right? I mean, even if,
Mm-hmm.
like I say, oh, I'm going to do this today, like if you don't have that support system, it becomes difficult. I mean, you would do it at the end of the day,
Yep.
but it
Yep.
becomes super difficult and that bogs you down. But I'm so happy to hear, like, that's our first line of support, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so nice. And
Yeah.
I'm sure they're very proud of you. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen you. I know you since
Yeah.
last 15 years, and I mean, I'm saying it again and again, nothing short of amazing, like how you
Thanks,
have
Neha.
transformed yourself.
Thank you.
So when you're starting this whole journey in the beginning, did you have any moment where there was I know you said that it was all intuitive and everything, but there are moments of when you say that, oh, did I choose the right path or am I going in the right direction?
Yeah. At the beginning, weekly basis, maybe daily, it was very difficult because on one side, astrologically, like I'm a double air and fire. So the air signs, so I'm a Libra sun, I'm an Aquarius moon. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm very dominant in that energy. And air is swords in tarot, and it's also about thought. It's also living in your head, right? And being a lawyer, I mean, Libra is the justice card. And then I'm a lawyer on top of that, right? It's like everything was like very strong in that energy, and a very logical approach,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I was
Yeah.
trying to bring logic into what I was doing, and I was also afraid of being seen. And a part of the difficulty came because like I was still in practice while trying to figure this out, and I was trying to live two lives.
Mm.
And where it came to emerge was during the farmers' protest, and where I was on the news being interviewed for it. And then they used my full name. And I was trying to like live by an alias on social media,
Mm-hmm.
which I was going by Rumi Hay on social media for people that have been around for a long time. That was done intentionally. I made that choice when I was doing my master's. So, like, again, very strategic about every move I make, right? And so that was because I was afraid of judgment. Of course I was. Naturally. I didn't want to be seen as a kook that wasn't going to be good at her job because she had these intuitive abilities. Like things that don't logically make sense, we say it out loud. Like, of course, I'm better at my job because of my intuitive abilities, but we know how the matrix and the patriarchy is, right? And in every single past lifetime, well, like, and many of them I've been killed for my gifts, right? Especially by the patriarchy. So, like, or because of those notes or extremism. So, I carried that in to heal into this lifetime. So that's one thing. but I used to question it all the time. And a main reason is because I've been a nerd since a young age. I've known what I've wanted to do since high school. I set out my goals. I did my 3 degrees. I got called to the bar. All of that was very difficult. That was like, from undergrad to getting called to the bar, almost like a 10-year process, basically, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, shit, I just spent 10 years getting here. Am I going to give it all up? And that was a huge battle for me. It really put me into an isolation. I very much, like I said, was called to do this work. And so I had to persist. Like, I couldn't go back, and I wasn't going to go back, but I really, really had to push like the boundary of my perception of myself and my abilities and what I'm meant to achieve on earth, and to take on the role. And like I said, I'm still expanding in that on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
realizing who I'm meant to be here and like just owning it. And now there's confidence around it, but that took so many years. And it only really shifted
Mm-hmm.
fully a year ago,
Okay.
and I was already fully doing this. And then get going, like deciding to get divorced really solidified it. Like that was also, we were talking about support. I
Mm-hmm.
let go of everybody that doesn't support me last year.
Nice.
And so that energy was something that I was dragging and trying to get people to understand me.
Mm-hmm.
And the growth that I've achieved in my business and in myself, even though people may not see it, it's the confidence and the self assurance
Right.
that I gained from leaving to now is the most growth I've seen. It's also astrologically aligned with this age of Aquarius we're in. But I don't want people to think that I don't ever question, or I don't question it anymore, that I never questioned it. And even though I've been publicly doing this work for many years online, for many of those moments behind the scenes, I was questioning my worth in what I was doing. 100%. 100%.
And that happens, I guess, once
Mm-hmm.
you're doing something that's not by the books.
Mm-hmm.
You know how we have a norm that's set by the society, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is how it's supposed to be. And this is what I've been doing so far. And that's
Yeah.
where I totally resonate with you, what you're saying. And I guess that cleansing is very much important when you're growing ahead. You have to shed. I mean, we see nature, right?
Exactly.
And no, that's so nice to hear that where you are right now. And I mean, to people out there, right? Whosoever thinks like, oh, is it the right thing we are doing?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's something that's coming from inside, you should go about it. Like, do not think twice. And
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking here, and I still have my doubts. Like, I'm in the initial
Yeah.
phase, and
Yeah. Yeah.
every morning I get up and I'm like, am I doing the right thing? But I think it's part of the process, and that's how we learn.
That's what I was going to say. It's like, January 3rd was not that long ago. And the fact that you're actually sitting here doing this is huge, because people can procrastinate for months or a year saying, I need to do this, I need to do that. And so I'm proud of you for sticking
Thank
to it
you.
and committing to it before your life kind of gave you other tower moments, right? That's
Yes.
what happens. They're like, no, we told you you need to do this. And then you start to see crumble in other areas. And so you chose something aligned, and now you're here. So that's awesome.
Yes, and talking to like smart individual like yourself, like
Oh,
it
thanks.
gives me energy, right? Like we want that positive energy around us.
Yeah.
Nobody wants negative energy, and I mean that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's move towards what's the difference between tarot and astrology? Or do they like are they both go hand in hand, or these are two different sciences and we make
Just
sense out of both together or separately?
I'm just grabbing my blanket. I'm here. So the interesting thing is that astrology and tarot is, well, they're different, but they can be connected. Certain cards you can interpret through the tarot as well. So just an example is cups are water. We have our water signs. We have, Scorpio, Cancer, and Pisces, for example. We have the swords, which are connected to thought, which are the air signs, fire, which are the wands, pentacles connected to the earth. So if you're an earth sign, fire sign, water sign, air sign, you're going to be able to relate to certain cards differently, perhaps, or perhaps the interpretation of the messaging will be different. through the major arcana, which are the first 22 cards of the deck, going from the Fool to the World. Typically, some decks are like typically you have a 78 card deck, but some decks they'll have more or less, right? Just depending on the artist. Those major arcana will also have significance with certain astrology, certain signs and symbolism.
Okay.
For example, right now we're in Aquarius season. Aquarius is ruled by the star in the major arcana, wish
Okay.
fulfillment and healing. So those things can go together, but when you're looking at interpretation of the cards versus astrology, you don't need to necessarily know the astrology of
Mm-hmm.
them. Some people believe you do need to. It's just a helpful tool to be able to interpret them on a different level. But the cards all have different meanings, and that may or may not change depending on the astrology. It may just give you more clarity or insight into it. And then, yeah, the astrology is made up of our 12 houses on our birth chart, what signs in the zodiac and what planets rule specific houses, what themes do those houses represent for you, and how can you interpret your kind of life path based on the planets or the symbols. So these themes and sub themes can be talked about for hours on end, right?
Right.
And then in the tarot, I can talk about interpretation of a card for a very long time too. I made my own deck now, and my own deck, each card has its own individual meaning based on something that I relate to in life. And,
Mm-hmm.
my descriptions are all a part of that too. And of course, that just came with a lot of practice. But at the beginning, like, it's not like I just had all of this knowledge at the beginning of it. Like I said, when I was preparing for a trial while trying to figure all this out, I was studying like the meaning of each card, right? Like for me, that was the way that I could get it done. And it was very basic at the beginning. And then once you start to tune into it, your intuitive abilities start to come online. And some people may already know astrology and are able to put that into tarot. And you don't need to be a psychic healer or have all of your gifts unlocked to know astrology or tarot. You can still have a basic level understanding or tune into your intuition, or if you study it, you're able to align with it. And I feel like your intuition kind of just naturally follows. But some
Got it.
people will think, oh, I can't just go buy a deck and learn. Yeah, you can. It doesn't
Okay.
mean you should be out there doing readings for people necessarily. But
Sure.
of course you can. People are like, I thought you had to be gifted to your first deck. I'm like, no, these are just dumb rules that people make up, that
Okay.
they want to kind of keep you in this loop of like no, you don't need to be initiated into spirituality by
Okay.
another person. You don't need to be given the torch to say you're worthy of this, right? It comes from a very egoic place,
Okay.
where people are like, oh no, why should you? It's like, why should you belong in our club? Did you pay
Hmm.
the membership fee? No, that's
Right.
not what spirituality is about. That's not what Ascension's about. So I never want to discourage people. And I have a whole course on how to read tarot on my website as well, which is a
Nice.
self-paced course, that people can go, and I have a workbook and stuff too. So that's there. But yeah, like I couldn't have done all of that without having gone through my own journey and process. And it very much started at a basic level, just like
Mm-hmm.
anybody that may be listening to this that's interested in starting. Like, again, it's been
Right.
over 7 years now, right? But it took a long time.
Right. And that gives people a lot of clarity now. Thank you for bringing into that segment because I mean, there are so many people who want to do it, right? But they're
Hmm.
still not able to do it because they think, oh, I don't know if I'm gifted enough or if I can read these cards. So definitely, thank you. And I'll
Hmm.
probably have your link in my bio where
Sure.
people can look into it and see if they want to do it. Because when I was talking to people that, oh, I'm going to have a tarot card reader on my show, and people told me we are so excited to hear like
Oh,
what you have
that's
to talk
nice.
about because people are interested. It's just like people have different way of showing it, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. And each deck, majority of the time, my deck as well, and other people's deck, like I always recommend those starting with the basic deck, the Rider Waite deck. It's far away from me right now, but the reason is because a lot of and that's the one I use in my course, for example, a lot of people make variations on that deck. So like I wouldn't start with my deck necessarily unless it relates to people in terms of the imagery, but you can because I still give a book explaining that. But the basic Rider Waite deck, which is the classic, whatever variation of that one someone would want, breaks everything down very, like, you're going to understand the cards at the base level. And then you become
Mm-hmm.
like, you're getting your degree in
Mm-hmm.
learning the cards, and then you start your major. Or you start taking different electives, right? Like that's how it kind of looks like. Like you want to know what is the base. And it comes with a paper, book in there so you
Nice.
can read what that means, right? You can feel into it. And but again, it's practice. Like for me, I built up my confidence in it by taking on some free readings, doing them for my friends. But my
Mm-hmm.
intuitive abilities have always been online. So if people feel they're blocked in their intuitive abilities, it may just take a little longer, not years, but it's
Right.
practice, it's
Right.
consistency.
But people can do it for themselves and
Of
just,
course.
but okay,
Yeah.
nice. All right. And I think with that, I want to ask you, have you ever experienced a very transformative reading that you've done with somebody and it changed their life? Like, do you have any example that you want to share?
A lot.
Okay.
I'm very blessed in that way. I also have reviews on, under my website and on Google with people sharing their personal experiences. Let me say, I'm just trying to think of one example that has been super transformative. I think the some of the most, like, not eye-opening but humbling ones is like when, like, sometimes I'm resistant in saying it, but if it's been a client for a while or I know somebody can handle my honesty, it's like if I'm telling them they need to make a really big career shift or relationship shift and they listen and they come back to me a couple weeks later or a month later and they've done it
Okay.
and I can see the difference in them and they're feeling liberated,
Mm.
that for me is very rewarding. I've had professionals in the last year that have sold their practices, given up their practices, are now traveling. Mentioned this another individual anonymously on my page the other day. We cured her hives through the energy work that we've done. I've helped people clear their womb space to help them get pregnant. Like there's a lot of stuff, but people think it's going to be easy.
Hmm.
And some of these individuals, like, they weren't able to hold on to the baby. Unfortunately, they miscarried. The reason that happens is because there were still things that they weren't implementing in their life. Or
Mm.
perhaps it was the baby came as a reminder of, hey, I'm here, right? Everything has a purpose. So it really sucks in those moments. But to see when it's working, to see people embody it, to see them understand their boundaries and why they're important happens all the time. So I don't have one example, but these things would be the most rewarding is when I get the message of like, hey, this actually happened.
Right.
Or like, hey, this worked, right? Or hey,
Nice.
it's been really hard for me to set the
Mm-hmm.
boundary. That was actually one. So sometimes I do those story readings on my story with the paragraphs. And I've never met this client, or I guess client, couple time client, face to face on Zoom. I only do Zoom calls for anyone wondering. I don't do in person sessions because my clients are international.
Mm-hmm.
But I had done a story reading for her. I very clearly set out the boundaries that she needed to put on in her life, out in her life, and the energy to get pregnant. And then
Mm-hmm.
she messaged me saying, after a couple of months of doing some very hard boundary setting, I just wanted to let you know I'm pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And like I cried and I was like, oh my God. She's like, it was so hard. I'm like, I know.
It
I
is.
know it was, but I'm like, look at what it got you. So that was, especially not having seen her face to face, but just like being able to do a short reading
Mm.
and help her get to where she wanted to go for me was like, holy shit. Like, I'm a little surprised.
Right. Yeah, and kind of touching on this thing that you said, I think in the middle, where there are some readings probably which are hard to tell to
Mm-hmm.
people, right? Like there are some cards which, I mean, which are not what we would expect. Like not everything is rosy. Let me put it like that, right? So how do you navigate through that? Like when you have to tell it to the people, I understand when you said you're very straightforward, right? Like there's no BS. So how do you navigate around that?
I feel like because I have very strong boundaries within myself and I'm very much in session, like I'm the person I am on my page is who I am in session. So
Mm-hmm.
people that come to me as either through referral or people usually through social media, so they already know who I am personality wise, right?
Right.
I'm not harsh. Sometimes I am harsh. I am harsh to individuals I've had for a while.
Okay.
To be like, listen, we've been working through this for 6 months. You're going to listen to me now. Like, I will give that tone, like scolding them a bit. But my coach does the same to me. There's one
Okay.
time where I did something fucking so stupid. And I was like emailing her and I booked like an emergency call. And she was like, she basically nicely told me to shut up. And was like, we need to fix this. Like, I don't care about why did you do that?
Right.
Right. And I was fully awake and aware of like why that was a stupid decision. Like, why
Mm.
did I do that? Right. And it was a cycle that took a really long time to get through. And I'm seeing glimpses of it now. And I'm like, oh my God, why are we still here? Right. It's not a negative anymore because I don't relate to it. But yes, you're going to get that. But for me, compassion and my client's goal is my main priority. I don't care how other people are impacted by you being in your alignment. I don't care. Because people that you love and care about are naturally going to be benefited by the decisions that you make.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no one person that's coming in saying, I want to fuck around on my partner or I want to neglect my kids. Like, those are not my clients. Every single client I have, let's say right now I have a mom that, she's already divorced. She has three kids, they're getting older. She's worked through a lot of different things with her ex husband.
Mm.
He's still giving her issues, right? The main thing that we are like with spousal support and paying for the kids' activities and stuff. And I've been working with her now for over 3 years, and seeing her change, like the change is crazy because she was divorced when I met her. She's still divorced, but her self-concept has completely changed. And through those years, we've had to work on stop people pleasing. Your parents are never going to understand where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
You need to choose yourself. And when it comes to your next partner, who cares if he's black, white, Asian, brown, indigenous,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we have to work through the fears that come along with choosing yourself. A
Right.
lot of people don't want to hear, hey, you have to not care about what these people are going to say if you want to choose to live in alignment. And people are receptive to it. Whether or not they actually take my advice is up to them. And then if they come back and they're still on the same path, then we have a different conversation. So I'm
Mm.
like, I'm not here to soothe your ego or to
Right.
reassure you and give you, like you said, this rosy reading
Mm-hmm.
to say, oh yeah, you know what, you can stay in this toxic dynamic and it's going to get better. That is not me. And
Mm-hmm.
I never allowed that for my life
Right.
twice. Why am I, I wouldn't be standing up with what I've learned
Mm-hmm.
if I'm allowing people to stay in any situation that's out of alignment, friends, family, relationship, career. So people know that coming to me. And I think for some clients, it also makes them scared to approach me. But they're like, okay, wait, I know. And I'm like, okay, I still come with compassion, but I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
so energy is, and predictions are, I heard this term once. I don't know where it came from, but I don't want to take credit for it. It's a helpful analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Predictions are meteorology report. Meteorology report. It's a prediction based on where your energy is at. Where's the weather at right now?
Mm.
You can change that outcome, the weather of your life, based on any decision you make any day. You go left, you go right, you're going to see a different landmark,
Sure.
right? So we are making these decisions every single day in the minutest ways. We just don't see how they play into our manifestations because we think what we manifest is just something so big.
Right.
We know that if we're going to go to the grocery store, we're going to be able to get eggs. And then we're thinking about, I want to go to the grocery store and get this limited edition product, we're going to create resistance in our life, right?
Mm.
So that's how we like kind of can look at our manifestations. What is like kind of the supply and demand? And so a lot of people fear making those big decisions because they're scared of letting go of maybe what's predictable right now, what gives them that safety. But people have heard what they don't want to hear a lot of times, but it has transformed them. Because if you're coming to me to make a change or you want to see a change, something in your life right now is not allowing you to get to that goal, period. And I'm going to tell you what that is. Whether or not you take that and you run with it,
Mm-hmm.
or you want to stay the same and expect your life to change,
That's
that's
not
up
gonna
to you.
happen.
It's not going
Yeah.
to happen. Like
Yeah.
we all have our subconscious fears and limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And that is a main part of what I work through is what are these limiting beliefs getting in the way of what you want to manifest? And
Mm,
how are you not embodying the version of yourself that wants to align with that?
sure.
And people that are ready to hear it are more typically the ones that come my way.
Sure. It's not like I'm manifesting that 10 years from now I will be a billionaire. But then if you're not like aligned to that particular manifestation, it's not going to happen. And then people say that, oh, it's not working. It's not how, these things are not working for me. So they are like pretty much like, I don't want to say it, but these things are bullshit, right? That's how they come up with. But what people are not realizing, like how you said, they are not like where they should be. And in order to manifest something in their life, they have to be on the energy level which get the manifestation done.
100%. And I don't know if you saw this live I did the other week, but I was drawing like a triangle on my whiteboard, and I'm like, a lot of people live down here at the bottom of the triangle, and in those emotions are the fear, the envy, the jealousy, the regret, right? At the top pinnacle of our emotions, and this is how we manifest, right? This is like level of consciousness is gratitude,
Hmm.
acceptance, happiness, bliss, whatever it is. If you're always living at the bottom of this triangle,
Mm,
there's absolutely no way. Like, that's going to give you certain outcomes. You can't even get to the top because your vibration is always at the bottom. So if you're not willing to let go of those emotions, not like you don't need to process them, but if you're in the self-deprecation again and again and again, and you're constantly telling yourself that you don't deserve it, you're not worthy, it can't happen for you, it's actually impossible for the universe to give you what's at the top because they're a direct reflection of our belief system. It may take a little bit of time for the manifestation to come into 3D because everything we're looking at is old energy, meaning what we are sitting in now is a manifestation of something we thought of months ago. So when we see that progress, we're like, but I was thinking about this months ago. Yeah, exactly. It's a delayed reaction,
right.
right? And
Yes.
so being present in like, oh my God, how is what I'm sitting in now something I manifested? How is that proof
Mm-hmm.
that all these other big changes are still yet to come? People get caught up in not wanting to persist.
Mm,
I want it now. I want the instant gratification. But if you're not constantly doing the work, the universe can't give you instant gratification because your belief system is not at the place of accepting that. You're not at the vibration of, I know I deserve it.
right.
And then people give up.
Of course. Because
That's a
they're not
natural
getting
thing.
what they thought they will be
Yeah.
getting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they
it's
stay in this, they stay stuck, right?
right. Yes, and in the same loop, right? Like we don't, let me put it like that. If you don't break free, you're not going to get what you're thinking you will be. So I,
Mm
yeah,
hmm. Mm
I
hmm.
totally get that part. And hopefully people here who are listening, I mean, whatever their beliefs are, like,
Mm hmm.
unless they are breaking through that, it's not going to happen. So that's
Yeah.
a really good insight.
Oh,
So I have seen you in your readings that you use different type of tarot cards. So is like from I remember you used to do those table readings, right? And those were different than what you use now. So is there any difference? Like let's say I get your cards for my own reading, but then there are other cards that are out there. Like how do we differentiate between like what type of cards should we use?
yeah. So I have a lot of decks.
Hmm.
I still use some of the ones, like, I do use those regularly, the ones on the table readings. Maybe I'll bring those back. It's just
Yes,
with
please.
moving and all these like changes, it's
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to like maintain some sort of routine.
Mm-hmm.
And people like different ways in which I do things. So once I'm kind of back in my like I'm just kind of moving through some structural things in my mind, then I'll bring that back so you can actually see the decks.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are oracles, and oracles are more like what it's a general theme. Each
Okay.
oracle deck is going to be different, have
Mm-hmm.
different themes, and then some of them are, or the other ones are like tarot decks, right? There are some that I made on my own, which is like the black square ones that are oracles, the timing cards, those are my decks, and
Right.
then I have my they're all available on my website, and then my tarot as well. But Oracles are more of a general overarching theme. Some oracles can relate to tarot depending on the deck, depending on the designer, depending on the messaging. And
Okay.
then there are tarot cards that have different visuals. So I have dozens of different decks that I've been drawn to because of the visuals. And so people are going to be, I mean, some people just have used one deck for their entire career, all their reading. That's also okay.
Okay.
You don't need to have all these decks in order to read. It's just something I relate to because I love art. I love
Okay.
photography. I love artistry. I love to see the different interpretations I get through different healers or designers that have made the decks, which is, also what led me to making mine. I choose based on what I'm drawn to. I don't use all of them the same amount or the same frequency. The ones you see me use more are ones that I'm more drawn to, most likely, or that are just calling to me.
Okay.
I'm trying to like pick up the ones that are less used more to like give them a chance.
Sure.
But for me, yeah, it's like, what imagery am I drawn to?
Okay.
Why do I like this? What colors am I drawn to? And then I just kind of choose that way. And then before every reading, I just decide what deck I'm going to be drawn to and use that accordingly. Like I said, when you're starting off, I always recommend starting off with the basic
Okay.
because some of these other decks will have even different words on them. So, like for me, instead of the Page of Swords, I have the Heiress of Swords
Okay.
in my deck, right? So
Okay.
that can be confusing for somebody that's just like trying to
Right.
start off and learn like, oh, what's an heiress, but somebody that's versed in tarot is like, oh yeah, she replaced this with this,
Right.
right? Or no, I think I replaced the knight with the heiress anyways. But yeah, like the oracle can kind of give an overall theme,
Mm-hmm.
and the tarot kind of deepens the meaning for some people. Some people just use oracles or
Okay.
just use tarot. So it's all about what you feel drawn to and how you feel that you connect to them the most.
Got it. So it totally depends on what you feel like that day.
Hmm.
Okay.
There's no rules.
Got it. And like going back to the same thing again, where, like sometimes people misunderstand, right? So have you seen anybody coming to you and telling you, "Oh no, this is not what I expected," and like you kind of answered that in a way, but just wanted to have that out there for people where, it if it's a common practice that people come to you, "No, this is not what I expected."
Once.
Okay.
Mainly because, and I'll never forget this, it was years ago, like over
Mhm.
4 years ago, maybe five, and I was doing story readings. She wanted me to give her assurance that her marriage was going to work out.
Okay.
And she asked me the question in two different ways
Mm-hmm.
and then was like, oh, well, that's not true. It's like, you're asking me the question because there's obviously some truth to it. And I was just like, well, that's just what it is, right? Like, sorry, kind of thing. That was the only time I got pushback,
Okay.
but it was because she wasn't willing to accept the fact that her husband just was who he was. And at that moment, I don't even know, I don't even remember her name, but I just remember this interaction. Like, I have no idea where their relationship is now or if there's been a change. I mean, whatever is meant to be. Other than that, sometimes I'll get not like the are you sure, but I always lead my clients, especially on a one on one session, because I'm there face to face with them for an hour
Right.
or in a tarot reading. Like if I'm doing a pre recorded, I'm able to lead them to why I'm saying what I'm saying.
Mm.
Or being like, hey, before we even look at this topic, I need you to give me a more clear intention.
Got it.
And does this framework you have fit with that intention? Yes or no?
Okay.
Right? Are you on that path to achieve that goal based on where you're at and what you have in your life?
Right.
And so sometimes people are surprised to hear that maybe someone won't change or their career may shift, or if they make a really big drastic timeline shift, meaning they increase their vibration to such a degree, the crumble happens. And so they're
Mm.
not expecting to not have control over the
Right.
external world.
Right.
I'm like, no, 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 this is a good sign. This is a good sign. But acceptance of that is where the
Mm.
difficulty comes in. Cause like, no, 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 I wanted to control when I left the job.
Mm.
I wanted to control when the relationship fell apart. I wanted to
Right.
control this or that. And that's where people kind of get a little shocked. But there are things that I see that I gauge when to tell my clients,
Okay.
when and what to tell them. I could see things like months down the road,
Okay.
energetically at least. Sometimes it can happen right away if someone makes that big shift, which is miraculous to see. Like, hey, I thought you were going to do that in 3 months. It's been a couple weeks. Proud of you. Like, that's really good, right? This means that you're accelerating.
Hmm.
Like for me, I can't sit on a decision for more than 2 days. Like that's it, especially big ones. If not, maybe a couple hours. Before, I used to sit in them for weeks. But like because of the work I do,
Mm.
it's like, nope, like I literally can't. I need to just make the decision and go for it. So I see that happening faster for people. Or they'd be like, oh, I see why you were saying that. Or like once they set the really strict boundary that I've been telling them for years,
Hmm.
and they finally decide that they're going to do it, that they value themselves enough to do it, that they can be strict with themselves. A couple weeks later, oh, so
That's good.
this changed in my life. I'm like, that's what I've been trying to tell you for 2 years.
Right.
Like, I wasn't just telling you to do this for no reason. So yeah, I don't get pushed back. I think like I said, people are more just scared
Mm.
to admit that they're in old behavior. And I don't judge, but I will tell them to stop wasting their own time.
Right. Yeah, that happens, right?
It
And
happens.
yesterday, like I saw your reading, and then there was I think coming to this segment where I want to understand more. Like, you did sage cleaning, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you were doing that. So do you have a ritual that you do before the reading, or like do we do that kind of thing?
Mm.
Just clear. I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Like sage burning is like energy clearing. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Getting rid of old energy, people use like Thum for incense
Hmm.
and like Palo Santo. I use all of those. I
Okay.
don't have a specific ritual before I read necessarily. I do like to cleanse my decks here, here and there, or between my readings or right before if I'm going on a live, just to kind of create, like to get rid of any of the fuzz
Hmm.
that's in the atmosphere or to kind of put a protection bubble around. If I'm doing like a reading for myself, which I do because I'm able to stay pretty neutral for myself,
Hmm.
I don't always cleanse my deck, but yeah, like it is good to have that, especially when you're getting started to like we can just sage the deck, Palo Santo, just cleanse it in whatever way, because your discernment may just be it's like it's becoming refined when you're starting to unlock your intuitive abilities.
Okay.
And like for me, I can tell when something's my energy or not my energy, or if it's a different client.
Hmm.
Like I know very well now. But when you're starting off, you may just not know like where it's coming from.
Hmm.
So it's maybe just adding like a little extra layer of that cleansing.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, there is no strict ritual that I do or that I think you need to do.
Hmm.
I think it's whatever feels right for you.
Got
You
it.
don't want to force yourself to do something. Like this isn't a degree, right? Where you're like forced to have prerequisites or things like that. They're just helpful tools.
Hmm.
And I think whatever people feel guided to do, but you don't need to make it like super extra or anything.
Sure.
And you can also put like a crystal, like a clear quartz or a selenite or something like that on top of your deck.
Okay.
These absorb, energy. They're also like a clearing crystal. So you could put that on top, for that energy
Sure.
to kind of continue to like filter out any of the old or negativity.
Sure.
Hmm. Yeah,
Sure.
static, exactly.
Right. I just looked at the time and it's already like we are
Yeah.
already on the top of the hour.
Yeah. I have time for a couple more if you have a couple more questions, but
Oh, okay.
I know the
Yeah,
time has flown by.
yeah, it's like I'm talking to you and I had the whole question set prepared and I'm like, oh, okay, I like, because
That's what
it's
I was saying to you. Like, we're gonna just end up flowing. That's usually what happens.
yes,
And
and those questions just kept on coming. Like
yeah,
I
they.
was so curious to know, like, because it's not easy. I mean, like how, like probably, like right now, I feel your energy. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
down today, like I was not feeling well, like just cold cough, and the energy that you have, like I get it. Like I feel so energized because of your
Oh, I'm glad.
energy. Like it
Oh, I'm
happened.
glad.
I feel so like, the questions are flowing. It was just coming out of me like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's funny how, like, I don't know if I should call it funny, but like energy does, like, like the vibrations that we talk about, the energy that we talk about,
It's
it's real.
synchronistic.
Yes. And when you are so negative in your energy, you will pass it on to people around you.
Yeah.
So it's very important that you yourself first cleanse your own energy. And then maybe if somebody is looking into going into tarot card reading, I guess take baby steps
Yeah.
and do that part, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Just it is overwhelming at the beginning because it's all of this floodgate of information that the floodgates to all of this information opens up unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like someone just like threw a pile of clothes on you
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh my God, now I gotta like get out of this and organize it and see where everything goes. You're like,
Right.
it's overwhelming.
Yes.
So that's a part of the awakening process too, is like in those moments of overwhelm, you need to take the time for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You need to find those pockets of time. Of course, that's difficult when you have other responsibilities or obligations, but it's just figuring it out, right? Figuring out the ways that you can have different boundaries, ask for support, delegate.
Yes.
and and yeah, so it's not like the awakening part is not like a peachy experience. I mean, maybe learning to read tarot is not as intense if you're not on or chosen to be on an awakening path. But this year is we're going to be seeing a mass awakening, and so healers like myself, we've been preparing the collective for this for a very long time
Okay.
and have cleared a lot of the energy to help people get to higher consciousness easier. Thankfully, like you don't have to go through everything we went through necessarily, or it won't take as long. But yeah, it's just allowing yourself to do what feels natural and giving yourself the permission to learn again.
Yes. I think that's very important. Like, in order to do something, like, we really need to learn the basics and then go
Yeah,
from there, right? Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yes. And I mean, I don't want to hold you back, but is there something or a small mini reading that you can do for the listeners or
I don't have my decks are on the other side right here, but I think one of the main things I could say is for a lot of people it's that are listening, it feels like there's resistance in stepping up, societal norms and expectations, responsibilities and obligations, but let's say there's a predominant South Asian population, Indian population listening to this. It's in our blood.
Mm,
We've been programmed to kind of patriarchally, nationally nationalistic, I should say, have been suppressed, right, from using our voice. And the main thing is really, again, it's in our blood. A lot of the power within our culture and spiritual beliefs from India specifically led through women, deities and gurus and Galima and these individuals, entities that are creating that space. So tapping into that, knowing it's true, feeling into it, knowing you're supported, and like I said, being okay with setting the boundaries and taking responsibility for yourself, right? There's a lot of stigma around that. So that's the kind of the energy that's mainly coming through for the people that are listening is like choosing yourself, knowing you're supported in that. And this year, even last year though, it's like we're in the crumble of the patriarchy.
mhm.
We're in the crumble of all of that control. So you get to empower yourself now and
Things are
choosing to,
changing.
yeah, things are changing. So energetically, you're supported in that. And the reason why it hasn't been as much of, let's say, a focus. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, it totally shifted out of me there. I had this like huge download and it kept going in and out. Wow. Okay. It left. Maybe it'll come back. But I mean, again, responsibilities and obligations. Yeah, that totally shifted. What, see, this is what happens sometimes. It's like whether it was shifted because the dark took it away and doesn't want me to address it, or whether it's not needed intuitively. And I think it's just not needed intuitively. So that's okay.
Okay.
We'll transmute all of the old and allow the new. Just trying to see if it comes back to me, but it's not. It was like going like this. It was like pinging, and I'm like, what's happening?
Sure. But I think you addressed the most important thing that
That's
you're
what I was going to say.
supported. Right. The transformation is happening. And if you feel like this is your calling and if you want to do something, just take a stab at it.
Exactly.
Sorry, I'm just
Always.
taking your
Yeah. No,
so
that's
you can
exactly
just
where it
take
needs
it.
to be.
But thank you so much, Raminder, for
Well,
being
thank you for
here
having me.
and talking about all things. I'm sure what I'm feeling right now is what our listeners and viewers are also feeling. The energy that you have is amazing. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Neha. I appreciate it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.